Are you ready for a super easy afternoon build that has crazy profit potential? Well, check this out. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how to make these giant snowflakes. You can make these out of scrap wood or less than $2 in material. Let me show you how to build these things. Okay, so for this build, you can use pretty much any type of material that you want. Of course, you know me. I'm going to be doing one of mine out of a fence picket, and I'll also do some out of a 2x4. But for the main part of this video, I'm just going to be using a picket just to show how you can actually build this just using one of these. And as always, I'm about to teach you step by step on how to build this thing. But if you're a plans in the hand type of person, head over to my website. I'll make sure to throw a link in the description. So the very first thing that we need to do for this build is to rip our material down to 1.5 inch strips. If you're using a fence picket, start off by cleaning up one edge, then set your fence to 1.5 inches and cut 3 strips. Or if you're using a 2x4, you just trim off the outside edge. Then you could either cut 1/2 inch strips off the outside edge by moving your fence in, or you could set up a thin rip jig like this and just move your material to the jig. If you don't have one of these little jigs, they are super handy. I'll make sure to throw a link in the description. Alright, so now that we have our strips cut, now it's time to cut these down to size. So for the 2x4 strips, I'm only going to be needing a few of these, and the same goes for our picket material. So let's get these parts cut. And the one thing that I love about this project is after we get these parts cut, there's really not much left to this. This is a perfect project for anyone, whether you're just starting out or you're an experienced woodworker. But back to what I'm cutting now. The very first part that we're going to need is one board that is 34 inches long. Once we have that cut, let's cut 4 more that are 16 3/4 inch long. And once you cut your 4 boards at 16 3/4, set your miter saw to 30 degrees. And then with the boards on their edges, let's add this 30-degree angle to one end of each board. Okay, so I'm going to call these the limbs. I know snowflakes really don't have limbs, but I really don't know what they're called, like each little branch of the snowflake. If you know, throw it into the comments, because I have no clue. So, limbs it is. But if your miter saw blade is dull like mine and has left these little hairs sticking off, let's go ahead and sand these down real quick. In any of the square edges, I'm going to put a little bit of a bevel on each one of the sides. Just going to add to the look. So what do you do when your battery runs out and you only have one little tiny piece left to sand? Well, use it as a hand sander. Or just go get another battery off the charger. But once we have that done, let's go ahead and mark the center of our main limb. Since it's 34 inches long, I'm just going to measure down 17 inches and make a mark all the way across the board. So now that we have our center marked, we can use this as a guide for lining up the tips of our 30-degree ends on each one of our limbs. I'm just going to put these in place so that they all meet at this line. Okay, so this is ultimately going to be the general shape of this thing. Now there's a couple of different ways that you can connect all of these parts. For this one, I'm going to be using wood glue and CA glue. Now if you wanted to, you could put brad nails in at angles and all of that. But then you would have to go back, reset each one of those nails because at this angle, they're not going to go all the way in. And honestly, once this glue dries, it's set. But for those of you out there that want this main frame nailed together, we can do that without toenailing in all of these nails. That's going to require an extra part, so I'll show you how to do that whenever we use the 2x4 material. So like you've seen me do in past projects, I'm going to be using wood glue, then CA glue to lock all of this together and kind of act like a clamp while the wood glue dries. Okay, so for those of you that are not familiar with CA glue, essentially it's just a thinner super glue that has an activator. Obviously the glue's in the little bottle, and then the spray that I'm putting on is the activator. The thinness allows the glue to actually get into the grain of the wood, and then the activator will set this glue within seconds. Okay, so now with all of our limbs put together, let's go ahead and cut out the rest of our parts. So to cut these parts, we're going to start off by setting our saw to 30 degrees. So the inside design of this snowflake almost looks like a star. So to create this look, we're going to be making a V shape that goes in between each limb. And each one of these V's are made up of 2 boards. We're going to be needing 6 boards with a 30-degree angle on each side that measures 6 inches from tip to tip. This will be the long sides of our V. And then for the short side, we're going to be needing 6 boards that are 5.5 inches long from tip to tip. Now since I'm using 1/2 inch material, there's a 1/2 inch difference in my lengths. And let's say that you're using 3/4 inch material, then you would need a 3/4 inch difference between your lengths. Now with these parts cut, let's go ahead and get these cleaned up and installed. So I decided on this natural one. I really don't want super sharp edges on all of this material. So I'm just going to take my sander and just kind of knock off this outside edge. Plus I can also get rid of this center mark that we made. So if you decide to do this step on yours, just do it before you put it all together. Okay, so now that we have these parts sanded down the way that we want, I'll show you how these V's are going to work. The short piece will connect to this long piece, just like this. Then once they're connected, they'll just slide right into place in between each one of our limbs. So to make things easier, let's go and get these V's glued up and then we'll install them. Alright, so you may have noticed that I do a lot of Christmas projects on the channel, and there's a reason for that. I actually really like doing Christmas builds, and it seems like that I'm not alone in liking to build Christmas items. So usually whenever you enjoy doing a specific theme of a build, there's some type of backstory or reason why. Well, for me, it's because this time of the year, I would always get my fresh lumber supply or a new hammer or nails, what have you. Because some of you already know this, but I was absolutely the kid that would ask Santa Claus for lumber. Yeah. So that tells you how young I was whenever I started loving woodworking and making things, and I still ask Santa Claus for lumber. So some things you never grow out of. To me, I guess I just relate, starting out with woodworking with Christmas builds, or that's when I knew that I would definitely have the materials to make something that I wanted to make. So if anyone out there loves woodworking and not quite for sure what to ask Santa for this year for Christmas, maybe take a little page out of my history and ask for lumber. But now that we have all of our little V's made, let's go ahead and get all of these installed. But first I'm going to go ahead and lay all of these into their spots just to make sure that I didn't mess up, and I do that a lot. It's a lot better to catch it now than in the middle of a glue up. And looks like it's all going to fit. Perfect. So now I'm just going to glue these in like I did for the rest of these parts, and we'll move on to the next step. And also, by laying all of these parts out before we attach them, kind of ensures that we line these parts up correctly so that it makes the star design. And if you notice that after I installed the first one, I installed the one on the exact opposite side of it. It's kind of like when you're tightening up your lug nuts on a tire. It just ensures that everything stays even and balanced all the way around. After all, wood strips do have a tendency to not be perfectly straight. Right, so now that we have our limbs and our little inner star here put together, let's go ahead and attach the final parts to this thing. So for our arrow parts, or arrow ends, we're going to be needing 2 for each limb, so 12 parts. With my saw set at 45 degrees, I'll be cutting each of these parts 3 inches long from tip to tip. And to make things easier, I'm just going to put a mark on my miter saw table at 3 inches. Then that's all I'll have to do is rotate the board between each cut. And there we go. I'll hit these with the sander, and let's go ahead and get these installed. Okay, so now to install these final parts, essentially they're just going to go like this. And you can either put them on by eye, or if you're kind of like me and want everything to match up, just use a flat surface to push against. That's all that you need. Then you just line your limb up with that, put your glue on, everything matches. So that's what I'm going to do. So earlier I told you my story on why I like to do Christmas builds. So what type of builds do you enjoy, and is there a specific reason for it? What's your cup of tea? And honestly, now that I think about it, there's several different types of builds that I enjoy, and I have reasons for most of them. So take for instance my passion projects or my crazy builds. Things like the split dressers that there's absolutely no plans for and that are super complex. I enjoy doing those types of builds because there's nothing really like it. It's just something that came out of my head, and probably more important to me is that they were challenges. I've never built anything like that before, and pushing yourself to your limits is how you grow. So I guess it's really not something from my past that drives those types of builds, but the challenge of it is definitely what I enjoy. All right, so I just had something happen that I don't know if this has ever happened before. It's usually the exact opposite. I have an extra part. So I cut 13 of these, and normally I would have only cut 11 and had to reset saws and do all of that. Probably rip down a whole new board just to make this little piece. But today must be my lucky day. Extra part. All right, so check it out. This thing is huge. It's big. I dig it. This is one fence picket. So this is cedar, so it cost me $4. But if I'd use pine, $2. So I can make this for $2. And the crazy thing is if you use a 2x4, you can at least make another one of these and maybe a smaller one. Let's go ahead and slap that one together really quick, and I'll show you a different way to connect this material. And then for the 2x4 material, I've got everything cut into the sizes that I need, and I went ahead and painted the parts because by the time that we get all of this put together, it's going to be pretty tight getting into all these different angles to paint. Then for the assembly, I'm going to be using a crown stapler. Now honestly, you can use brad nails, crown staples, or whatever that you would like. I just wanted to use these because each one of these staples is like putting in 2 brad nails. So let me show you how I would put this together. So essentially the only difference in the parts by building it this way is that you're going to have 2 center arms that are 34 inches long. And we'll mark each one of these at 17 inches. So essentially we're going to be putting these together as 2 mirrored parts. And instead of using CA glue, I can use wood glue. And install a crown staple. I'm going to line my first limb up and then install it from the inside. After the first side is put together, we'll just repeat this for the second. Now we have 2 identical parts that's actually held together with nails. And whenever you put these 2 parts together, we have our limb design. But before I actually install those 2, I'm going to go ahead and nail together all of my V parts. And again, honestly, I think these would have been perfectly fine with just glue. But if you want to guarantee that these things are going to stay together, this definitely doesn't hurt. Now with all of our V's put together, let's go ahead and install the outside V's on each limb assembly. This will allow us to get nails or staples in on both sides. If you're dead set on using brad nails or staples, you'll just angle your gun in to attach those from the inside. We'll do the same for the opposite side when we're ready to put our 2 pieces together. To put these 2 together, I'm just going to use some wood glue and install 4 or 5 nails or staples to connect. And then the only thing left to do is to install our little arrow ends. But since these are cut at 45 degrees, they'll have to be attached from the outside. And honestly, using brad nails or staples doesn't look bad at all. And here's the stapled or nailed version. I think that it turned out pretty awesome. Really, either way that you choose to do it, just a matter of preference. And here we go. Check these out. These things are huge and awesome. So we have made one with a 2x4, super cheap, and we've made one with a fence picket, again, super cheap. So you can essentially make these for around $2. But if you think about it, the material that we used is 1.5 inch strips. So think about your scrap pile or what you have access to. Essentially, you wouldn't have to buy anything to make these. We have came up with something that pretty much anyone can build, and a lot of people are going to want to buy these things. I have a crazy feeling that these 2 probably aren't going to make it out of my house. But the whole point of this build is just like any other build, that there's no excuse to not build something. And if you follow the channel much, you know exactly what the next step is. Get up, get out, get your build on. We'll see ya. Imagine taking a pile of wood and turning it into something amazing. Now, imagine doing that without years of frustration. You do not need a fancy workshop, expensive tools, or years of experience. With Woodworking Kickstart, you'll build confidence and real skills in no time. So you can spend years making mistakes and learning the hard way like I did, or you can start building with confidence today. So join me in Woodworking Kickstart and let's get your journey started.